I'm going to stop the record. All right. So I think everybody that's on should be able to hear us. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to show a very short PowerPoint that thanks our sponsors and talks a little bit about our festival and our community, and then we will get into the good stuff. So hold on one second while I share my screen and we will get started. Oops, sorry. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, there we go.
Okay, we're back. It looks like everybody except Tamar is muted. So, now Tamar is muted and Brad isn't. Okay, so what is the? Let's get Tamar unmuted. There we go. I'm Al Rudis, and I'm going to start right off. You see the star of the movie that you all watched and the director. So welcome. And I asked them if they wanted to be introduced, and they said, no, let's go right into the Q&A. So the questions are going to involve a lot of them introducing themselves and telling us more about themselves. So that will be their introduction. So I'm going to go right into some questions. I got some questions from, it turns out, one of Tamar's friends, Mar Slutsky. So he sent some questions, and I have a bunch of my own. So I'm going to start off by telling a lot of you don't know this, but Tamar is now an ordained rabbi, and so congratulations.
Thank you.
And Brad told me that you still prefer to be addressed as Tamar informally for tonight, right?
Yes, yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So I'll say Rabbi Manasseh just this once. Congratulations. Tell us about how that happened, how you became a rabbi. You know, we saw some things in the movie, but bring us up to date.
There was a lot of kicking and screaming and crying, and not necessarily all on my part. So that's kind of how it happened. It just was time. And I think that just with the movie and with the work that I've been doing, it really moved them into a place where they couldn't come up with any more good reasons to not ordain me. And it actually brings the Israelite community into the 21st century. It brings the Black Jewish community into the 21st century. So it was just time for them to do it, because I mean, it had honestly gotten to a point with me where I was kind of like, I don't actually need this. Like, I've been doing this job for a really, really long time. And, I'm not doing it because I want to be a rabbi. I'm doing it because I already am. So that's kind of what it came out to be for me. So how it happened, it basically, one rabbi pretty much unilaterally decided that it had to happen. And that's Rabbi Capers Fanay. Thank you. And he just decided this is going to happen. And he's been my rabbi my entire life. So it's like, okay, this is happening. And you guys can get on board or not, but this is going to happen. We're doing this. And so that's how it happened. Boom. That's how it went.
Okay, now that you are officially a rabbi, what are you doing with your rabbinical degree? What are your plans for the future?
To keep doing more of what I already do. to keep spreading more awareness, to pretty much keep building bridges. You know, being a rabbi, just that title, it really does open up ears and eyes and hearts that were once closed when I was just Tamar Manasseh, but Rabbi Tamar Manasseh seems to be. I have a bigger voice. I have a different platform. I have a larger megaphone. So sometimes I can get through to people that I couldn't get through to before, and I feel like the Black community can really use Black rabbi like me, and the Jewish community can really use a Black rabbi like me. So I mean, this is good. This is good for me. That's what I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep doing pretty much more of the same, more of what I've been doing.
Okay, so let's go back, step back a little bit. Uh, did I hear you say that you grew up in the Beth Shalom B'nai Zaken synagogue? From that's where you went
Yes.
to Hebrew school, and you introduced in the movie one of your teachers there
Yeah.
was there. Okay, so tell us about in that case, tell us about the history of this congregation. You know how this came to be, this the whole congregation and the rabbi that ordained you.
I went to a Schechter day school actually.
Oh,
Beth
okay.
Shalom didn't have, yeah, Beth Shalom didn't have a school.
But that's where
But
your family was members, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Beth Shalom, the congregation is over 100 years old. It's the oldest congregation in the country. And so there's a lot. The history in Chicago is something. It's quite the story. In 1924, Black Jews in Chicago were actually taken to federal court by the Jewish Federation. They sent lawyers down from Wisconsin to pretty much prove that this group of Black people who were saying they were Jews weren't. And it was like an offense, like a punishable by law kind of offense. And these Black Jews won in court. And it was kind of like, no, they've proved that they are actually Jews. And the way that they actually did it is that the Black rabbi could speak Hebrew, but the Ashkenazi rabbis or the Ashkenazi lawyers could only speak Yiddish. And they admitted that Hebrew was the language of the Jewish people. So that's pretty much how it went. So ironic. And just from there, it was kind of like after that, there was a lot of persecution. Those rabbis who were in court then kind of went underground. And but the congregation still grew, it was still there. So there was still someone there. So one of the rabbis was actually biracial, and he had family on the west side of Chicago, where it was a large Jewish community in the around what am I trying to say? Around Maxwell Street on the west side. And he had family there. And his father, it was rumored that his father was an Ashkenazi rabbi in New Jersey, and his mother was Black. And he went and stayed, the story goes, he went and stayed with his father's family on the west side. And he pretty much became white while he was on the west side. And he actually pretty much primed the pump for the Black Jews from the south side to come gleaning on the west side with those congregations. And he would urge those rabbis to like donate. If they come around and they ask for something for Passover or for the holy days, donate. So he was kind of the man inside. It was all very Jason Bourne-ish, very 007. And when he got older, he actually came back to the south side and resumed his position as rabbi. And that's where he died, with Beth Shalom on the south side. And that's how Rabbi Green got into what was then the Chicago Jewish College, which is now Spertus. And yeah, the rest is history. So after that, there was Rabbi Reuben, and then Capers. I remember when he had hair, a lot of it. And Capers he was actually ordained when I was about 10 years old. And so I remember him sitting under other rabbis. I remember him coming up. I remember that. So it was really something for me to watch him grow, and then for him to watch me grow, for me to remember him being ordained, and then for him to ordain me. So it is truly a Lador Vador kind of thing.
You know, listening to this, you know, I lived in Chicago a long time. I never heard any of this. You were talking earlier about writing a book. Has any book been written about this? Has any documentary been made about this,
I'm
Brad?
getting to it. It's
Oh,
coming. Tell them about
okay.
it, Brad. Take it away, Brad.
Well, I can't speak about a book, but Tamar and I are working on a follow up to this film that will look more specifically at Tamar's Judaism. And we can't do that without going deeper into the history of Black Jews in America.
That will be amazing. That
I hope so.
that is looking forward to seeing it. Well, you did. I'll say I think you did such a great job in this film that I'm sure it's going to be great. So, Tamar, one of the things that was sort of missing out of this movie, I'm glad there's going to be another movie, was about your family, your work career, your children. Tell us a little bit about that.
I love them all. I had a job that I hated, and now I love the job that I have. And I mean, like I'm just like everybody else. Like, I got into mask. I started mask and started doing what I was doing because I mean, aside from being Jewish, I am a Black mother on the south side of Chicago. And I do have two young adult children. And at the time I started mask, they were both teenagers. And I think every mother on the south side of Chicago, I mean, honestly, right now, Black or white, we're all asking the same question: how do we save our kids? So all of this came about because, I mean, I came from a family of, my mother was very involved, my grandmother was very involved. They were always like, helicopter moms. They were always around. And it wasn't just they were helicopter moms just for me or just for us. It was for all of the kids in the neighborhood. They cared about what happened to all of the kids in the neighborhood because they understood if you keep those kids safe, they'll keep our kids safe. So you have to take care of all the kids to keep your kids safe. So I kind of got it from them, and that's how I raised my kids, and that's the attitude that I took into mass with me. That's how I started it. It was just about, how do I protect my kids? How do I save my kids? And I realized, hey, they have friends and their friends have friends. And when they all get together and hang out, you know, I don't know these other people. And sometimes neither do they. They don't know what's going on in their lives. So I have to find a way to protect those kids to create a safer environment for them all if I want my kids protected. So that's the kind of family that I came from. And honestly, that's the kind of family that, I mean, like my kids I've raised. That's who we are.
So, okay, so do you mind me getting the details? How many kids do you have?
Too.
Two. And are they still in high school now? Are they in
Oh, no,
college?
no,
Or
no, no, no,
they're
no.
working?
I
Or
have a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old. Yeah, they're taxpayers now.
oh, they're taxpayers now. Okay, so
Yeah.
speaking of taxpayers, so do you mind telling us what the career was that you hated and what the one is that you're in
I
now that
sold
you love?
I sold real estate. I sold real
Oh,
estate. There's no reward in that for me. But what I do now is, I mean, I wake up every morning and actively repair the world every single day. I seek out cracks. So I'm like a social contractor, a social carpenter, or something like that. It is my job to literally fix the world. I see cracks everywhere. Just yesterday, a young rapper was murdered in Memphis, and Memphis is on fire now because of that. And it's a conversation that we have to have about art imitating life or life imitating art. And if what is it that's going on in the lives of these kids that they're rapping about is getting a murder. So that's a huge crack. So these are, I literally see things every day that I know one day I'm going to have to tackle because these are things that need to be fixed in order for the world to be more harmonious. In order for it to be fixed, somebody's going to have to deal with these things, and everybody doesn't see them. So the cracks that I see, I feel like it is an obligation for me to somehow at least start the work of repairing them, even if I don't finish it.
so would you say that you're self-employed, or is there any kind of foundation or kind of structure that you're working
Mask.
within?
I work for Mask. I actually work for Mask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mask is now an official organization that's okay, and it has I assume a tax ID number so people
Yeah.
can look it up on the internet and
Yeah,
contribute if they want
Max
to.
is one. Yeah, Mask is probably is going in the direction of being the very first Black Jewish ran social justice organization in the country. The first one founded by a Black Jew. The first social justice organization founded by a Black Jew. The first one. So I'm pretty excited about that because we are now starting to see more diversity in different Jewish organizations, in social justice organizations. And there are people, now who are heading it up. I think Sandra Lawson is at the head at Is it Bacola Shone or one of those? But we're starting to see more diversity in the leadership of social justice organizations, but never has a Black Jew actually founded a Jewish social justice organization. Excuse me.
Okay, so that is what you're doing now. Um, so, and I read an interview with you in which you alluded to other projects, and you just mentioned that now. So tell us some of the other projects that Mask is working on besides the street corner thing.
Well, we built a school, so we have that. We actually, on that corner that you see in the movie, it's not a vacant lot anymore. It's actually, we built a school out of shipping containers. So during the entire pandemic, when America was shut down, there were kids at home. Our kids were in a classroom every day. We literally built a school out of shipping containers on this corner, and we figured, hey, if people can build pop-up, they can have pop-up stores and pop-up shops and pop-up restaurants. Why can't we do a pop-up school? If kids in poor neighborhoods are afraid to go to school because they have to cross so many gang boundaries, why can't we just bring the school to them? Chicago has an abundance of vacant lots. Why can't we put schools on those corners, in those vacant lots? Why can't we do that? So at least kids have more accessibility to education. They have more of an opportunity to actually get an education, because right now they don't in this city.
So was this done with the Chicago Board of Public Schools, or was this done independently? Okay,
She's choking on water.
okay,
I can answer briefly.
okay. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, this was done completely independently, without the support of state, local, federal officials. Mask doesn't get funds from any of those sources. So Tamar started to build out those classrooms before COVID hit. And originally, they were going to be vocational centers for high school kids. And then the pandemic struck, and Tamar quickly realized that there were younger kids who were in dire need of education. They had parents who were considered essential workers, or they were living in places without access to high-speed internet or to computers. So Tamar pivoted very quickly, and that learning center was up and running within the first few days after the pandemic.
So all during the pandemic, Tamar, you had kids from the neighborhood live in-class instruction, whereas all these wealthy kids in the suburb had to sit at home on their computers.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. We had kids every single day. We had kids. And I mean, we fed them 2 meals a day. We worked with each of them with their online learning with CPS. We taught them additional things. We did supplemental educational work with them. So, yeah, that's what we did every day. We even had an online component called Study Buddies for kids who needed tutoring while they were doing remote learning. So we had volunteers from all over the country signing up to help kids with that work. It was amazing.
That's great. So
we do have I want to make sure, Al, that we do get to some of the
okay.
questions starting to pile up. So I want to make sure that we get to.
Okay, so I'm going to go up here to the Q&A and take a look. I think we answered this question: how has the work of your organization been funded? Well, yeah. I'll ask that. How has the work been funded? How do you get people to donate money to? What have you been doing to get the money coming in to make all this stuff possible?
People hear about what we're doing and they donate. That's what happens. We don't get any funding from the government at all. So, sometimes we get small grants or donations from foundations, but for the most part, it's just individual donations. It's like $18, $36, like high donations. That's just what it is. People see what we do, they want to support it, and they donate. That's really what happens. That's how it goes.
Here's a question. Have you experienced anti-Semitism in the Black community?
Absolutely. I sure have. And it took me a while to even figure out what that was. Like it's something. It's sometimes hard to be in leadership in the Black community and be Jewish. because everybody wants to know. Like it's like, like, who are you? You don't want to come to the prayer breakfast, or you don't want to do this or that. No, I mean, like, that's just not my thing. And it's sometimes Black people have a problem with Black people who reject Christianity for one reason or another. They just do. When I was growing up, I mean, I talked about it in the next movie. I talk about it more. But I mean, like, I'm 7 years old and I'm explaining to like adults, like, why I'm a Jew, and they're telling me, well, you shouldn't be that because the Jews killed Jesus, and I'm like, were you there? So I mean, that's how young it started. So that has just that's been pretty much the theme of my life. And the more popular mass gets and the more we do, the more we see that. So, I mean, it's okay. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me.
Um, so here's a message from your friend. Here's a question from your friend Bar Slutsky. What directions have you gone in as far as school, food, and how you follow your own perspectives? I don't understand the food part. You'll have to explain that. So the question is, what directions have you gone in as far as school, food, and how you follow your own perspectives?
Well, with school, we just kind of, just pretty much support what CPS is doing. So we take whatever the curriculum is with CPS and we just make sure kids are getting it and try to give them a bit more, support with that. And with food, we still are feeding kids every day. And we feed them when they get out of school now. So some kids don't have dinner at home. So we make sure that they get a hot meal when they get out of school. So we still do that. And my own perspective, um, I'm not sure what exactly that means, but I mean, my own perspective, I'm going to keep doing pretty much things the way that I see that they should be done. Not necessarily the way that others do it or the way that it's popular to do it, but the way that I feel like it should be done.
Okay,
I
I'm
hope
going to go
that
back.
that was the answer.
Okay, I think that was good. Brad, I'm going to go to you now with one of my questions. How did you hear about Tamar? Tell us how the movie came to be made. Uh, and how did you get, you were there with the camera at all these interesting times, like when the rabbi told her about not being, did he agree to that in advance to be filmed, but telling her, sorry, you can't be a rabbi yet? In other words, was the film partially scripted? Because you always seemed to be there when things were happening with Tamar.
Okay, so I'll tell the origin story first. And I know Tamar loves this story, so
It is my favorite story ever.
I read about her online in the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, has a daily email news roundup from Israel and the United States with stories that are relevant to the Jewish world. And I saw an article, the title was Black Rabbinical Student Leads Army of Moms Against Gun Violence, excuse me, against gun violence in Chicago. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And I opened up, I clicked on the link, and at the top of the article is a picture of this striking woman named Tamar Manasseh. And I went on to read about the incredible work that she was doing to combat gun violence on the south side of Chicago, and the organization that she created, Mask Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killings. And what really struck me was the part of the article where Tamar credited her Judaism for her activism. And I thought to myself, this is an interesting person, and I want to know more about her. And even just from that first article, I felt that I wanted to make a film about her. So I didn't know her. I didn't know anybody who knew her, but thanks to the internet and Facebook and social media, I was able to get in touch with her. I sent her an email to the organization's website. I introduced myself as a filmmaker in New York City, who I said, I read about you, and I think that you would make an interesting subject for a documentary film. I didn't hear back from her at first, and finally I got an email back, and it said, thank you for your interest. I think my life is about as interesting as watching the paint dry, so I'm going to pass. And I was disappointed, but I wrote back and I said respectfully, I disagree with your self-assessment, and I would hope that you would reconsider. And at the very least, maybe we could talk to one another. So that was the beginning of an on again, off again correspondence. And the on part was me reaching out to her. The off part was her not always getting back to me. But she got back to me just enough that I did not lose hope. And we ended up speaking on the phone twice. And after each conversation, I hung up and I thought to myself, she is even more incredible than I originally thought. And I felt I had to make this film. And one day I got a direct message from Tamar on Facebook, and she said, I'm in Staten Island. I can meet you now if you want. So for everybody out there, I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and technically speaking, Staten Island is part of New York City, but it is nowhere near the Upper West Side. And I wrote her back immediately and I said, give me 2 hours and I'll be there. And I literally stopped what I was doing and I drove out to Staten Island. And I think I was there in under 2 hours, but not by much. And we sat down and we talked for a long time. And when she told me that she had gone to Jewish day school, I thought to myself, okay, I know you, because I also went to Jewish day school. And I just felt that we spoke this language that only day school kids speak. And finally, at the end of the conversation, she kind of shrugged her shoulders and she said, you know, I guess if you want to make this film, we can do it this summer when we go back out onto the block. And that was all I needed. That was what we did. So then to answer the second part of your question, there was nothing scripted in this. My approach to making a film like this is when I'm on the block, whatever is happening around me is magic. We're going to capture the magic. Things that happen on days that I'm not shooting didn't really happen. Because if I felt like I was missing out on something, then I would go crazy. So I only thought that, okay, anything that happens when I'm here is gold. And on days that I'm not shooting, nothing really happens. And I have to live with that reality in order to go home sane and to make a film that I feel like is complete. So, for example, when the police car drove up with the children, with the small kids in the back, we were just there. It just happened. I mean, that never happens. So when you're making a film like this, you need to have those moments that are, and I hate to use this word, it's with such a delicate and horrible situation, but it's almost magical. It's miraculous that something like that happens and there's a camera there. It was awful, but even in the moment, I knew this was definitely going into the film. In terms of when Tamar spoke to her rabbi about the vote not happening, that kind of just happened. We went to the synagogue that day because I was curious to see the synagogue. And we went in, we filmed. Tamar talked about how standing by the Ark was her favorite place, or had been her favorite place in the world, until she went to 75th and Stewart, and then that became her favorite place in the world. And as we were walking out, the rabbi poked his head out of his office, and Tamar said, so what happened with the vote? And he told her what happened with the vote. The camera was rolling. He knew that the camera was rolling. And yeah, that's what happened. We had interviewed the rabbi on the block, and you see it in the film. You know, he's on 75th and Stewart when we were talking to him. So that was right around the same time. So he knew who we were at that point, and he saw that there was a camera, and he didn't say, hey, turn off the camera or don't record this. He was very frank as to what happened. And, you know, just not that this question was asked, but I'm going to answer it anyway. there were almost no moments where Tamar said, turn off the camera, you can't shoot this. There were a couple of private conversations that she had where she was like, okay, I'm turning off my microphone because I'm talking about something that is personal to me and not relevant to the film. And I mean, we were fine. But there wasn't anything where she said, you can't film this, you can't do this, it's too much or too personal, whatever it was. It was, I mean, I could not have hoped for a better experience.
Thank you. Tamar, in terms of at 75th and Stewart,
Yes.
is that, do you live within a few blocks of that neighborhood? You mentioned in the movie that you had been at two other locations in previous summers. I didn't quite understand, how did this whole thing start? Did it start with at the beginning of the movie, or the movie caught you in the progress of this thing?
No, I don't live anywhere near there. I live closer to Hyde Park. And
Oh.
I was at 75th and Stewart is the most southern end of Inglewood. Inglewood is probably one of the most blighted communities in the country. So it's right on the most southern, it's the most southern tip of Inglewood. Where I grew up is on the other end of Inglewood, on the most northern tip. So me going back to Inglewood, it wasn't scary, it wasn't hard, it was natural because that's where I'm from. But I live near Hyde Park, so near the University of Chicago now.
Oh.
But and I went there because a mom was murdered on the corner across the street from where we sit every day. And I just felt like enough is enough. You can kill, men, you can kill children, you can kill women. Who's going to survive? If everybody's getting killed, who's going to survive? No one makes it. Somebody has to do something. So no, I think we were already up and running for 3 years before Brad started making the movie.
Yeah,
And,
but you were across the street.
Yeah, we were across the street for the previous 2 summers before Brad came into the picture. But we were already up and running. And even before we got to the block, the year before that is when we actually started Mask. And we started Mask. We were trying to figure out exactly what we wanted it to look like. And our very first project was called the Able Project. And it was actually inspired by Tu B'Shvat. And just as all Jews plant trees in Israel and plant trees for Tu B'Shvat, I figured, I planted all these trees. I grown up planting trees every year. And, for in memory of lost loved ones, in memory of, to memorialize graduations and weddings and other simchot. And the thing was, it was kind of like, hey, me planting a tree for my grandmother in Israel when she died, it helped me. It helped. It made me feel better. And I felt like, what if we could give these families who lose their loved ones in Chicago every day, what if we could give them a feeling like that? So what we actually started doing was planting trees on the spots where people were murdered, trees that would grow red leaves. To kind of symbolize the blood that was shed there. And for families who couldn't handle trees being planted on those spots, then we asked them, hey, what was his or her favorite place? We'll plant it wherever their favorite place was, a grandparents' backyard, in front of a school, in a park. So we planted quite a few trees, and it was really cathartic for the families. But just to see at these things, it was almost like a funeral all over again. There would be crying, and there were all these tears, and we would actually have the family put the tree in the ground and put the dirt on the tree and actually plant the tree. We would actually do that. And at one of these tree plantings, a kid came up to me about 16 or 17, and he says, when I die, I want my tree planted over there. And I kind of laughed at him, and I'm like, I won't be anywhere around when you die. I'll be mummy dust by then. And he kind of just looked at me like, really? And I thought about it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you know what? He's right. And I'm too late. If I'm planting trees when they die, I'm too late. This is about stopping it. This is about how do we save lives, not creative, beautiful ways to memorialize them. How do we save them, right? So how do I get on the front end of this? How do I make sure? I mean, planting trees is a beautiful thing. How do I make sure that we're not doing this again next year? So I spent months and months and months trying to understand, trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we get on the other side of this? And one day it was like, an epiphany. This mom is murdered on, like, she's breaking up a fight between two kids in the summer. It's like 7 o'clock. It's not even dark out. And someone does a drive-by and she's shot and she's killed, doing what moms do every day. And on the news, they said she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I couldn't understand what that meant, because if you're a mother and you're breaking up your kids fighting, and some kids outside fighting, and you're breaking it up, how exactly are you in the wrong place at the wrong time? How is this your fault? This is what you do as a mother. This is what you do. So if I could be murdered for momming, we have a problem. Our society is something, okay, this was too far. This was my straw. And it was kind of like, okay, I have to figure out exactly how I'm going to handle this, what I'm going to do about this, right? So it was how do we handle this? Well, we know that there's definitely going to be violence. We know that coming from this, there's definitely absolutely going to be violence. There's going to be retaliation because a mom was killed. And that mother had sisters and brothers and nephews and cousins and aunts and uncles. And there's a lot of hurt feelings, and there's going to be some form of retaliation. Absolutely. You cannot doubt that. So I figured no one wants to get caught shooting or killing someone. It's murders every day, but nobody wants to go to jail for it. And I figured that if I could take all these moms, and kids hate having their privacy invaded, right? If I can take a group of moms and we go sit on this corner, and we know that violence has a chance of reoccurring there, and we can somehow stop it just by putting those mothers on that corner, we might be able to fix this whole thing. So the idea was, if nothing happens out here, then this is what can work. If we can intervene, and if we can stop this from happening, because we're here, this thing might be able to work. So we went, we were there 3 days after she was actually murdered. So within a couple days, we were kind of absorbed into the fabric of the community. Like, those kids really needed us. They needed somebody to listen. After seeing something like that, they actually needed counselors and therapists. But if we were there, fine, we would just stand hands. And I'm glad they had somebody to talk to. But I realized the problems were so much deeper and so much more plentiful than I thought they were. So it's kind of like, nothing happened. After that, nothing happened. There was no retaliation. Nothing else happened. And I figured that what we were doing, we were successful. We successfully done what we set out to do, but we couldn't leave, because by that point, the community depended on us for a lot of different things. We cooked dinner every night for everybody. Kids came out and were playing every day, riding their bikes, racing up and down the street, jumping rope, playing hopscotch, doing things that children do without fear of being murdered, because all of these moms were sitting outside now. There are all of these people outside to watch us. And it was amazing. And we couldn't leave. So that's kind of how this whole thing started, how we got into this. And Brad just kind of came into it when it was just, kind of a movie already in progress called My Life. We were already doing this. And he just so happened to stalk me out and make this movie. That's what happened. And it was, as far as it being scripted, Brad, I hate to tell you, you missed a lot when you weren't here. There was always something going on. You missed a lot. And it's just every day is something new and amazing that happens. And it's not always amazing good, right? You see a lot of things out there. It's a lot of things that the camera didn't get. It's a lot of things that the camera did get that's actually not in the movie. But no, it's not scripted. That's literally what my life is like. On any given day, you just never know what you're gonna get. Every day is a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
and just to add on a little bit to that not scripted part, I didn't really have any agenda in any given day when we were filming, other than, well, we're just going to see what Tamar is doing today, and we're going to follow her. You know, some days we would get to her house, and she would say, "Okay, I've been thinking about this last night," which meant that she didn't sleep the night before, and she was ruminating on things. And she said, "And this is what we're doing today." So whatever she said we were doing, we did. I didn't have a shooting schedule where I said, okay, today we need to do this, 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 and that. It was just every day we were there, we knew Tamar would be on the block between 4 and 8. And prior to that, she'd have to set up, and she'd have other things going on. So that was kind of how things worked. And the only things that, you know, were like set pieces, so to speak, were, well, we decided to go to the synagogue, or when we joined her and her mother on the trip to the Carolinas, and of course the holidays and the parties. So if the Labor Day block party, we knew that was happening the Sunday before Labor Day, so we're going to film that. So there were things that we knew were going to happen, but we didn't know what was going to happen during the block party. For example, we didn't know that Tamar was going to get on the mechanical bull.
Tamar didn't know either, though. Tamar didn't know she was going to do that either.
There was alcohol involved.
Okay, I have another question for Mark. How has your reception in the white Jewish community changed? And what do you attribute this to? Well, we haven't really talked about what your reception has been in the white Jewish community. In fact, you and your synagogues, you mentioned some of the things in the past. What has been the relationship, if any, between your synagogue and you and the white Jewish community in Chicago?
Well, my synagogue and me have a much different relationship with the white Jewish community in Chicago. My synagogue doesn't necessarily, go visit other places. It doesn't do that. It doesn't move around. I do. And the thing is, it's kind of like I learned to look at this. It's changed a lot, because I think we all had to have some sort of perspective shift. And the thing is always, for me, don't ask me how I became a Jew or how my family became a Jew. You should probably ask me why I'm the only one. How is it that it's this, I've never met a Black Jew? And it's like, oh, no. Don't ever tell anybody that. I mean, just lie about it if you have to, but never say that, because it makes it sound like I cracked some sort of weird code to get into Judaism and I wasn't supposed to get here. And it's like, how'd you do it? And it's like, what? I wasn't supposed to be able to? How did I do it? It's almost like, how did I pull off this master, this trick? How did I do it? I didn't do anything. This is just who I am. And so I think that when we look at it that way, when we look at it as why aren't there more Black Jews, as opposed to how did you become Jewish, it changes everybody's perspective. So I think there's a lot more questioning now, and it's not a questioning of each other. I think we're asking ourselves really hard questions now. And I feel like I've challenged people to ask themselves these very hard questions, to grapple with these ideas that they might not have even known that they had before they met me and before we talked. So I think people are really doing the hard work of changing themselves, changing their minds. They're learning more, they're reading more, they're meeting other people. They're actually looking to engage with Jews who aren't just like them. They're looking to do that now. So I think that I talk a lot. So I think some of the things that I may have said over the years has actually started to get through.
Is it, I know that in California, whatever, at least the conservative and reform synagogues I've been to, I haven't been to a lot of other different kinds of Jewish synagogues. There is a broad range of ethnicities and colors there. Is it that way in Chicago too? Outside of your synagogue, is it? Are there other races that are Jews in Chicago, from what you've seen?
Okay, so my synagogue is actually on the corner of 75th and Stewart. So let's clear that up. I have
Okay,
no intention of ever
okay,
being anybody's pulpit rabbi ever. That's not for me. My congregation is out in the world. That's where my congregation is. It's everywhere. It is Judaism up close and personal. It's Judaism that's coming to you. It's not like, for somebody from 75th and Stewart to learn anything about Judaism, the closest temple is 5 miles away. And when you go there, it's surrounded by police on Shabbat. And the congregation people are going to look at you like, what are you doing here? And then when you go in, everybody's going to look like, hey, why are you here? So it's a very unwelcoming kind of thing. And I mean, some people can't afford to actually get on a bus just to go and explore a new idea, explore another religion. They can't do that. So I like the fact that I can bring all of this to a corner, to a street corner. I can take it with me wherever I go. So if I'm gonna go to Mississippi and I'm gonna be in the middle of a cotton field, I can take my Judaism with me there and I can share it with everybody there. So I like the fact that it goes wherever I go and I share it with everybody that I'm around. So I'm not it's my congregation um is diverse because it's all of these people. But I mean, at Beth Shalom, at other congregations in Chicago, it's just segregated like Chicago is segregated, still segregated. And I mean, as much as people want to actually, do something about it, we don't always do that. And it's not enough to just have, at Pesach, we get together and we do this crossover Seder or something like that, a freedom and justice Seder. That's not enough. It's not enough that we get together just at Sukkot. That's not enough. This needs to become the norm. It needs to become the norm that when you walk into a synagogue, it looks like everything. It looks like everyone. But in Chicago, because it's still so segregated, it's not quite that way. And Beth Shalom is actually, from what I've seen, probably one of the most diverse congregations in the city. It's such a large, um, um, a large population of Anusim, of Hispanic Jews there who only speak Spanish, that the service is translated into Spanish while Capers is talking, while whatever is going on in the Bema, all of that is translated into Spanish for the people who are there. And it's amazing to see that. So you don't know what you're gonna see when you go to Beth Shalom. You're gonna see all sorts of people, and nobody is gonna look at you like, okay, this is weird. What are you doing here? Because everybody is there. And I really admire Rabbi Fanay for being able to create a congregation like that. And I mean, like, but I love what I do on the block. I love what I'm able to do on the corner. I love, kids. There was this mom who called me one day asking me, where do I buy amazing crackers from? And I was like, amazing crackers. I have no idea what you're talking about. And she was like, my kids love these crackers. They said they're amazing crackers. That's what they're called. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, when you had that dinner, the Seder that you see on the block, we had that dinner on the corner and you were eating it. They were round. And I said, matzah crackers, not amazing crackers, matzah crackers. And it was hilarious, but it was touching. It was something. It told me something. Something about me was impressed upon these kids. They remembered something. It's a takeaway. Even if it's amazing crackers, at least they took away something that they didn't have before. And so it's people are asking questions. We just did Yom Kippur on the corner, and we lit 800 candles for every soul that was taken in gun violence from last Yom Kippur to this. And it's amazing when we do these things because it's such an outpouring of emotion for people in a place where they suffer so much loss. So doing a Yiskor service in a neighborhood where people are going to funerals pretty much every week of the year, that is priceless. The idea that you are still connected with ones you lost, you're still connected. You can still pray for them. You can still help them. You can still do this. It is an amazing idea for them. It's something that it's unimaginable for them because no one ever told them that they could do that. You bury your loved one and that's it, you're done. But that's not what Judaism says. So there are a lot of ideas that a lot of just a lot of what we have that really can help the world, but the world has to go to a synagogue in order to find it. So it's kind of like I like being able to bring all of these brand new and terrific ideas and life altering ideas to people who really need it, because otherwise they would never get it.
Thank you. I have a question from Kate. This is a tough one. How did it affect your approach to mask, and what reaction did volunteers have to the murder of 2 women volunteers? I didn't
Okay.
even know about this.
First, they weren't volunteers. They weren't volunteers. And the only reason that I even spoke on it is because it literally happened after we left. It happened at night after we were gone for the evening. That's when it happened. And one of the mothers, she came there with her kids, and, they came and ate, she came and played. But I mean, she wasn't like a member. It wasn't that. And the other one, her kids were older. We saw her. She came and talked to us sometimes, but that was that. But it wasn't like we were being targeted. It wasn't like that at all. But the idea that this is sacred space for mothers and children and for the community, you don't kill people here. People don't die here. People live here. People have joy here. You don't do that here. So the idea for me, it was kind of like that, just like, strengthened our resolve. It was like, it's no way we're going to let them. This is the very thing that brought us out here. A mother being murdered. We can't let mothers being murdered chase us away. We can't do that. So it was like, that was a big deal for us. It was kind of like, that's when we really got to see what we were made of, who we really were, if we were really going to stay. And this was what, Brad, a year or two before the pandemic?
It was the summer before the pandemic. It was 2019, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so even after that, like, we built the school after that, because what can come out of this? Something beautiful has to come out of this. Life still has to come out of this. So we're planting trees for them in the spring, and that's what we're doing right in front of the school. So that's what we're doing. It didn't affect the volunteers. We had people come out and support us, and people who felt like, we feel like, we need to be more involved to make sure you're safe. Yeah, it was just an outpouring of love from the entire community after that.
But if I can add something to that, it was really the media that made that into a story, that it was masked women who were murdered, where it really wasn't the case. Like Tamar said, Mask isn't a membership organization where people walk around with, their membership cards. It's really anybody who receives, a meal. Anybody who sits down on that corner is a member of Mask. So, like Tamar said, it happened late at night. It wasn't as if, the block was filled with children and volunteers, and it wasn't like what you see in the film. It was, it's a dangerous neighborhood with a lot of poverty and a lot of crime, and 11 o'clock at night, bad things do happen. And Tamar and I talked a lot about this before these mothers were murdered, because, and we mentioned in the film, Tamar mentioned in the film, that nobody had been killed in that neighborhood since Mask started sitting out there. And I asked her, very bluntly, well, what would happen? What would it mean for Mask if somebody does get killed? And, Tamar can speak to this right now if she wants, but she said to me, it doesn't mean anything to Mask because we can't prevent every single shooting from happening. What Mask does is so important, but it can't solve all of the problems of Englewood or of the South Side of Chicago or of poverty. These are systemic problems. And what Mask does is amazing, but it's not 100% foolproof. It's not ironclad. There's nothing that is. So I thought, like, oh, well, maybe Mask won't be seen as being as successful if somebody gets killed out there. And Tamar said, no, somebody will. It's just a matter of when. But the fact that the numbers are so much smaller compared to what they were before is really the transformative nature of what Tamar has done.
And what I've learned, like I said, with the kid at the tree planting, and I realized when he told me that, I want my tree planted there, I realized even when the pandemic hit and we got those little kids in our classrooms, that's when I realized I was too late for some of the young adults that were on the block when I got there. These were already young people who already had relationships with gangs. They were people who had records already. They'd been in and out of jail. And even at that point, you do have, this is a bright spot. You do want to change your life. You do want to turn things around, but you did have a life before you got to that point. You did do a lot of things before you got to that point. You were a different person before you got to the point where, oh, what life is worth living. I want to have a different life. But at this point, you're fighting 3 cases and you're looking at doing 20 years in a penitentiary. And as much as you want to change your life now, that's just not really actually an option. And I learned that when those little kids came into our classrooms, that's where we should have been starting all along. And so even if people get murdered there, we can't abandon the kids there. They still need us to make sure that they don't grow up to be the shooters, to grow up to make sure they're not the victims. They need us. So when people get killed, we have to really show up to make sure this next generation of kids don't become the next generation of killers.
I do want to just jump in because we are starting to get to the end of our hour. And I just want to make sure that we have time for you I know a lot of people want to know, how can we help? How can we be involved? I know you put on ontheblock.org, but can you talk a little bit more about how we can help, how other communities are helping? I know that it's growing. When I went on the website, that you have more communities. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, and how we can get involved. There's lots of questions. Unfortunately, we could probably be here for hours asking you questions. It's been very fascinating, but if we just talk about that before we end, I think people would appreciate it.
Okay, so I can pack this one into my wrap up. One of the questions, the mayor is not interested at all in what we do. We have no help from the city at all, not at all. And my mother was awesome. She worked for the state of Illinois for years and years. She was a caseworker. That's what my mother did. Just awesome woman. But right now we're working on our Chris Mahana Kwanzaa drive. And on Christmas morning, what we actually do is, since we're Jewish, I'm not busy on Christmas morning. I mean, what am I doing? I'm like drinking wine and watching the whole Godfather trilogy, right? That's what I'm doing on Christmas. So now what we do is we actually are doing a drive. We have an Amazon wish list up, and you can go to our website and you can find us on Facebook and click the link and go and buy toys. Because what we do on Christmas morning is we line up in this really long, last year, Brad, we had like 50 cars in a caravan, and we load all of these cars up with toys, and we go drive through some of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, and we pass out toys on Christmas morning. And that is what we do. So people come from all over the Chicagoland area to do it. And I love that it's mostly Jews that are doing it. It's phenomenal to see all of these people out there. And it's a beautiful thing to be able to interact with your friends that way, and to actually really introduce yourselves to the community on a different level. For you to actually be out here hand to hand. This is a Jewish person giving a gift to a Black kid on Christmas morning. There's no better bridge builder than that, right? So we're doing that on Christmas morning. So if anybody wants to go to, anyone wants to donate to the wish list, you can find us at ontheblock.org or Mask Chicago on Facebook, and you can click the link and donate to your heart's content. So yeah, that's how you can get involved. That's our project right now.
Okay, so I think that's a good place to end. as Dana said, there's a lot more things that you brought up that I want to know about, and we're going to look forward to Brad's next movie about you and Mask and your history and so forth. One quick question that I had, maybe you could answer it quickly, and if not, we'll skip it. There's a guy in the movie who kept wanting you to get into politics. Okay, you said,
Jesse.
I'm not ready for that right now. That's in the
Yeah.
future, whatever. So how do you feel? What's your feeling about that right now?
God, no. No. My insurance wouldn't cover me if I got murdered in Congress because I shouldn't have been there in the first place. Do you see what kind of place that is now? No, thank you.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Tamar and Brad. And
Thank you for
of course,
having us.
Dana.
Well, thank
So
you so
much.
much.
This
This
was
was
great.
really a wonderful, and I'll find those links and I'll send them out to everybody so that they can
Thank you.
find them. But
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Have a
Good
good
night.
night.
Bye.
Brad. Thank you, Tamar.